Weekly Goofy Language video number 10. In Goofy language script, we have two sus letters. In Unicode, they're represented by these sussies and hollow letters. We also have turned L for J. This was from a previous attempt at making an extremely hard language where I think it made the J sound? I can't remember. Then we also have small capital I with Karen and small capital R with Karen. They're supposed to be just small capital I and R, but those are already two of the Howink Drew's lowercase letters. The Karens are only placed there to disambiguate them, and they're optional. Also, the Howink Drew the lowercase check R can have two Karens to disambiguate from lowercase small capital R. This is also optional. We also have the dot diacritic that I mentioned last video. It is used for altered vowels like I, and oi. Next, we have how to trigger German speakers. This funky looking B letter makes the B sound. It doesn't make the S sound. Why would it suddenly make an S sound? This looks nothing like an S. Next, we have the cowboy emoji. It can either say gada gadi gada gada or it can indicate a phonemic cowboy hat. That's right, this conlang has phonemic hats. But don't worry, you don't have to switch between them every syllable, because I don't want to have to go back and add hats to every word I have so far. But Matthew, you have to add the hats. It's funny. Okay, I'll add them in a different dialect. The hats dialect. Wait, there are dialects? Of course there are dialects. They make a language more interesting. The dialect I've been telling you about is the main dialect. We also have the curly letter shift dialect, where curly C says hya instead of sha. Some IPA speakers were tired of C cedilia and decided they really like curly letters, so they made a new IPA chart. Two of these letters have to be approximated by Osage letters, but it's worth it. This phonemic alphabet doesn't use the slashes or brackets, but rather the curly loop emoji. This is to avoid confusion with the real IPA. This caused the curly C letter to shift to hya in their dialect of Goofy language. But the original sh letter still says sh because it's written with Z curl with ring, and the voiceless counterpart of Z curl j is now S curl, which is still sh. Next we have the BFDI dialect, or as I like to call it, the BFDI dialect. The BFDI. The pun makes more sense written down than spoken. It makes references to BFDIA instead of BFB and Teapot. It ignores any episode that canonically happened after the latest BFDIA episode, so the Fritzkny rule would only apply to BFDIA instead of Teapot. So instead of Bullshu Fritzkny, you just say Bullshu. Except you don't. Because if you're referring to a time after BFDIA 9's release date, the words for coin and needle swap. So you'd say necesitada to refer to a coin. The grammatical gender is based on the word's definition. So you say yo necesitada to refer to a coin. But the actual names of the BFDI characters stay the same. So coiny is still bullshoosh. Hi, this is me after the release of BFDIA 10. The words for needle and coin swapping is a reference to BFDIA 9, where needle and coiny's voices swapped. But in BFDIA 10, they somehow swap back, so coin is no longer necesitada, it is now bullshoo. They're only swapped when referring to between the release dates of BFDIA 9 and 10. We also have the Armless dialect spoken by armless people, where hand sounds are replaced with quite cursed mouth sounds. For example, the clap sound is replaced with the velar nasal click. How is the velar nasal click cursed? Because it has its own IPA letter, even though its articulation is judged impossible. I have yet to come up with other replacements for hand phonemes.
Originally, manual sounds were just going to be ignored, but I changed it.
People with arms can use the armless dialect in some circumstances, but they usually end up not using it because manual sounds are funny. The rules for whether or not people with arms can use this dialect are extremely complex, almost as complex as Sambasa's verb conjugations. But if you have no arms, you are 100% allowed to use it. And if you have arms, you are always allowed to not use it and instead use the usual manual sounds. However, when using the armless dialect, you are not allowed to use your arms to put on and swap hats. Doing so is an insult to armless people, so use your legs instead. If you have no legs, use another body part. These dialects can stack with each other, so you can speak the BFDIA curly letter shift armless hats dialect. Back to the orthography. But first, we need different background music. No, we already played that. There we go. Back to the orthography.
It can make some questionable decisions.
Any letter can potentially make almost any sound,
but it's still somewhat consistent most of the time.
You can't unambiguously derive spelling from pronunciation or vice versa. Some spellings are totally unpredictable. Also, sometimes there's no way to tell whether a group of letters is meant to be treated as a multigraph or as separate sounds. Usually languages with multigraphs put a diaeresis on a letter to tell the reader that those letters should be pronounced separately. For example, G-U-I in Spanish usually says gi. Put a diaeresis on the U and it's now gui. On the other hand, Goofy language doesn't do that at all.
So you're gonna have to guess whether KY loop says G or K.
Next we have these two letters, Latin gamma and ram's horn. So back when ram's horn was called baby gamma, many IPA speakers believed that it was a small capital version of gamma. Meanwhile, some evil IPA speakers switched some lowercase letters with their small capital counterparts. The three they did were B, OE attached, and gamma. So the IPA chart looked like this.
Pretty cursed, am I right?
Goofy language speakers liked this chart 107 better than the old one, which is why B is B, OE attached is gamma is and baby gamma is G. This IPA change was reverted very shortly, but it remains in Goofy language's orthography. But baby gamma's name changed to ram's horn because many IPA and Unicode speakers realized that this is not small capital gamma. This was before the term howling through lowercase was coined, so they used to simply call it the secret third case. So they stopped using ram's horn for the secret third case gamma, but they still use gamma for and ram's horn for G. Next we have this Poliespo letter which says Z. Then we have this other Poliespo letter which says B. It's supposed to be P and W overlapped, but due to Unicode limitations, and there not being a very good way to approximate it, it is just P with a W on top of it. It can still be written in handwriting as that one Poliespo letter. Speaking of overlapping letters, there's a fourth letter case, Poliespo style. So far, there's only one Poliespo style case letter, the esh. Unlike P, this is a real Unicode character. It's actually a sum symbol overlapped with an integral symbol, but those symbols are both related to the letter esh. They're not directly related, but they all share one common ancestor, the Greek sigma. Back to that one Poliespo letter. You can easily approximate in superscript due to the way diacritical letters display in some fonts. All you need to do is put a superscript capital P and a diacritical W. I'm using capital P because lowercase p is not tall enough to overlap with that W.
The but is much easier to recognize for native Goofy language speakers than the P with W above. So use the funky overlapping technique. If the diacritical W actually displays above the P because of your font working too well, just give up on overlapping the letters. Also, this letter is called Poliespo.
And finally, we have the quadrilateral fricative, where a letter can't display properly. Like, subscribe, comment what you liked in this video, and suggest more stuff. Okay, bye.